Hey guys, I'm in a really magical place right now. I'm in Wellington, New Zealand at the incredible Weta Workshop, who contributed amazing concept designs and props and models and constructions for the eagerly anticipated Ghost in the Shell, and we are privileged enough to actually be able to see them in person and talk about them. Richard Taylor is here to tell us.
Adam, great to have you in our workshop again.
Oh, I love being here. Every time I come is an adventure, and this is blowing my mind how magnificent these are. Tell me what your original charge was to make here.
Well, getting to work on Ghost in the Shell, as you can imagine, a seminal movie in all of our movie watching history, but
Yes.
also an extraordinary opportunity to bring to life physically. Rupert, the director, wanted to do as much as possible physically, so big thumbs up right
awesome.
there.
Perfect.
And
yes.
These would have easily been tackled digitally, but he wanted physical geishas for the scenes where the geishas have been hacked. They transform into these bizarre, deadly cyborg-like creatures, and in this case, we wanted to do them very much as costume characters that were worn by very elegant, beautiful dancers.
And normally, you were saying earlier off camera that the original idea was maybe to do these as prosthetics, but you decided to do them as masks.
Yeah, that's right. There was a lot of ideas thrown around. We did tests where we just did straight makeup on people. The problem there is that their own pore structure, the imperfections in the human face doesn't let that extraordinary elegance of the sort of the quintessential geisha come through. We tried prosthetics. We ultimately campaigned very hard to do them as porcelain dolls, literally so they would feel like they were made out of hard materials, and that's indeed ultimately how we ended up doing them.
And when you're making masks for people, how did you work out getting hard masks on soft people? That's not always a simple problem.
Well, the first thing we did is Rupert chose one actor, a young Japanese actress called Rila, a very famous actress, and she already had an extraordinary face. We scanned her, head cast her, and then we made her digitally symmetrical. Then we had to fit every other actor's head inside Reela's head. Very tricky, as you can imagine, because we have access primarily to European featured people, larger noses, broader bridges to their nose, etc., etc. But fiddling around, we got their heads to perfectly fit, and we're able to make them comfy. In fact, if we open up this one, you'll have to help me a little bit.
Right.
But if we hold it up, and so it's simply got the sort of thing that you have on a ski jacket that hides away inside here.
Wow.
And you loosen that, and that slides apart, and off it comes. And that's the inside of the mask. It's very important when doing things like this that you can dress the actors quickly, because the frustration for the actors of being stuck inside these things. So if you're doing a mask, you want to be able to get it on and off really, really fast. These cables up here are to go to batteries that drive squirrel fans that are inside the head.
So they have a little bit
so
of
they've got
cooling
well, they've actually got
circulation.
quite a lot of air sucking through their nostrils and over their faces. A nightmare for the poor sound guys, of course, because you've got these things whizzing away. And they're actually expelling through these very nicely hidden slots here in the hair.
You've incorporated the design of comfort all the way into the aesthetics.
Yes, trying to be very thoughtful of that sort of thing. The foam pads you can see in there are specifically to hold pressure points. We try and pick up on these specific pressure points on the face. These are where the hard bone areas are. If you pick up here, the mask will slide and slip around on the flesh. But if you pick up on the hard points, I call it the washing line of the human face. These are where the pegs are on the washing line. It will hang on to the face very, very well.
This is the kind of institutional knowledge that Weta has from decades of
lot of mucking around with this sort of stuff. The eyes, interestingly, are done very similar to sunglasses, so that when you have no light behind them, you can't see through them at all. But should you look through them, you've got pretty good vision.
Yeah.
A big problem is lack of peripheral vision. A real big challenge with puppets is that the moment you put a puppet head on, and you take the peripheral vision from what our human eye has to a pinpoint out here, and you lose your balance, of course, because we use our peripheral for balance. So
the paint job is really magnificent. Did you sculpt these?
We milled them and then did a huge amount of model making on them to get them as perfect as they are.
Oh, so they were 3D printed?
3D printed and milled. Inserting, we put in the pins. These are actually just standard dressmaker's pin heads, but we wanted to get the quality of domed surface that you couldn't have got in a 3D print or a mill. I myself spent hours on them, as did a number of members of our staff, trying to get them as perfect as we possibly could. All the hair is 3D printed initially. We take molds and then take castings. In the case of one that's been blown up, of course, there's a huge amount of scratch build model making into them.
It's really intricate and beautiful and kind of super intense to see it up close, to see such a beautiful thing so destroyed.
These are the things that go into the back of the donors' necks. These have got horrible pins that come out and skewer into the docking points, and these are tendrils that come out of the throat. As you'll see here with this full body, even though they are future tech, this is a world in our future, we don't want to always play to what is expected in the form of a hard tech, manufactured, engineered world. And as you can see here, many people watching this will remember a movie such as Hugo, which celebrates in the automata of the 17th and 18th century.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to find here is a technological mix between handcrafted, beautiful, skill-based work. Maybe the Asian eye maker in Blade Runner is a great example of that. I only do
Chu.
eyes, but Chu, he has this extraordinary ability to weave his craft into the objects he makes. And we're trying to find that in turn.
How much fun to work with such aesthetic richness from the model making, casting, molding, design standpoint. There's so much to sink your teeth into.
To have a client that is willing to let you go to these places, that isn't just thinking at a single plane of ideas, which are, well, it's future tech, therefore it must be like a modern day cell phone.
Right.
It's lovely to have someone that's willing to take these sorts of creative ideas and run with them, which is very nice.
I'm even seeing some incredible details like in molded designs in these clear resin hair
the hair pieces. I really, in the case of these, I didn't want them just to be lucite blocks. I wanted that we saw form of ancient Japanese wood carving within them, for instance. But when the light hits these, they ping beautifully. And so these are all lucite components cast into it.
Now, and while these are static props, you actually contributed some animatronics, and this is an example of some of your animatronics.
Our animatronics department did a great deal of work on this movie, and in the case of this, as you can see, so
dude,
so she opens and closes, and out of the mouthpiece here is where the tendril feeds.
That is terrifying.
If you come in closely, you can see that it's completely clockwork. It's all working.
Gears that are actually spinning in there. It is so gorgeous.
Yeah, so this really captures that quality of the hand skill automata clockmaker of the 17th century. But then with, how do you move the facial muscles? Then it's got this very electronic motif in it as well.
Well, so I know, as having worked with animatronics, that this requires the coordination and collaboration of artists and engineers and craftspeople working together. There's a tremendous amount of coordination going on.
Yeah, there is. To bring something like this together and bring it together really quickly, because you can almost describe it as shooting from the hip. There's no chance to aim and fire. It's almost like a gunslinger and the only way that works is if you're intuitively connected because you've done it so many times together before. And one thing has to flow into another. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't go wrong, of course. Yeah. And when you're jerry-rigging something like this, as you do in your own work, there's no plan. No one wrote a manual to do it.
No.
You've never done exactly this before, so you've got to jerry-rig it to some degree, and that just requires almost guerrilla model making.
Yeah.
There's some nice little ideas like these panels are held on by magnets. So that if the thing gets knocked, they don't smash the mechanism.
That's really cool.
These will just detach, and then we can simply clip them back on.
That also makes working on them and model making
Correct,
them
exactly.
much simpler.
So, and they self-home and go exactly back into place.
Oh, that's
and of
amazing.
course, when they close, they've got to marry back up exactly together. This may not look like a great deal of complexity to your viewers, seeing the immense complexity in things like an automotive car, but trying to get those petals to exactly match together in perfect timing. Whew,
No, I look.
very tricky.
Every car door is a masterpiece of
Yes,
engineering.
it is, absolutely.
And-
A car door is a surprisingly complex thing to make, and to get the hinges to work and hang and not misadjust during, operation, and that's exactly the challenge here.
One of the things I love about visiting here, Richard, is how much you guys embrace both the entire history of film, using some of the oldest techniques imaginable, and yet marrying those to some of the newest technologies. You're always building your own 3D printers and 3D routers, using latest technologies for scanning and digital interfaces, and the results are just gobsmacking in person.
Oh, thank you. It's interesting, the camera that's filming us today, it only exists because it's climbed on the shoulders of cameras before it over 100 plus years. And here, what we're trying to do is iterate on top of the technology that we were using yesterday to do something unique tomorrow. No audience wants to see tomorrow what they saw yesterday.
Yeah.
So a movie like this, we would have struggled to make this movie in the time we had to make it 2 years ago, because neither was the technology around, nor was the chemistry within the technology around. The skeleton that we built, which I hope to show you, the materials weren't even in existence 2 years ago, so we couldn't have built it.
Right.
But we can build it today because technology is iterating and growing just like the camera might be.
And because you guys are paying attention to that technology and incorporating it into the model.
You have to have this unabashed enthusiasm for data sheets, basically. Choice of reading a novel or a data sheet, it's going to be a data sheet, because that's where you learn this stuff. That's where you discover the amazing things people are doing all over the world.
How big was the team that Weta had on Ghost in the Shell?
Oh, I think at its height, probably about 120, 150 people.
That is
we had a big on-set presence, complementing the amazing makeup department, and a team just looking after practical effects, but most of it was in the build back here in the workshop.
Right, because when you build something like this, it's not, you don't just build it and send it to the set. You have to support it. You have to be able to rig it, fix it, change it.
On average, we do 6 to 7 movies a year. Only one of those may be in New Zealand, so that means we've got to have crews on the road somewhere in the world looking after the stuff. And you can't just turn back to the workshop if it breaks. You've got to know it's not going to break, and you've got to go well equipped if it does go wrong. So it requires a very unique type of human to go out on set and look after the stuff.
Richard, thank you so much for showing these beautiful objects. I hope someday there will be an exhibition of these where people can come see it in person, because it's really
hope.
I'm here to tell you, no matter what you're seeing on this camera, and Joe's going to get some beautiful close-ups that you've probably already seen during this interview, in person, it looks twice as good. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Cheers to you all. We'll put her back to sleep, eh?